Okay, welcome to the May 11th Environmental Advisory Council meeting. My co-chair, Matt, was going to run this meeting, but he was too busy, so I'm stepping in to run it this month. So, as usual, our first point of business is approval of the meeting minutes. Were all four of us at the meeting in April? No. Linda, yeah. You can lie. All right, so we'll have to delay the approval till the June meeting of the April
Or unless
minutes.
somebody else comes up.
Yeah, unless somebody comes in. Okay, that's number one. Number two, the future tree planting locations in the township. We sent out an April 14th letter to the supervisors and various township employees about recommendations on 6 tree planting locations for the rest of this year and then beyond 2023. And Fred Weiss got back to me and wants to put it on the agenda, the supervisor agenda, and that will probably be on June 7th. So Jim and I will be there, and if anybody else wants to come along, you're welcome. And in the meantime, Jim, we're going to go, or at least you're definitely going to the farmland preservation meeting to get their input on the alley of trees on, what is it, Woodside?
Yeah, Woodside and Dolington.
Dolington, right. So it'd be good to have their input before we go before the supervisors. And also,
I'm not exactly sure where that's going to go, to be honest with you, because I know they're always reluctant to give up, any ground at all. But, the way I'm going to pitch it is that you give up an acre of ground and you get over 70 trees. So I think the environmental benefits, are much more with the trees than with the farmland. But, we'll see. I know Dennis is, an official tree hugger. He loves trees, loves to plant them. So we'll just see what develops.
okay. And I may put together a PowerPoint with the maps, aerial photos of the locations and where the trees would go in. So when the supervisors talk about these locations, they can actually see what we're talking about, where they'd go. And I may run a map or two by you, Jim, to make sure I got the right locations.
Yeah, okay. I think that's an excellent idea. And we also, I think in the letter, talked about the benefits of a future long-range tree plan as well, correct?
Yeah, so we can bring that up when we are there June 7th. All right, item 3, recycling. The April 22nd Earth Day recycling event was successful. Kevin, you picked up the batteries. I saw they were gone. We got a lot of styrofoam and no issues getting it over to Ray Bob's. And we did get some of the bags back from Ray Bob's that we can use for our next recycling event, which is good to reuse those big plastic bags. We had plenty of volunteers, which helped things go smoothly. I think we had 6 people helping. And among the people was Dan Bornstein from Lions Club. And he said they could provide volunteers for any upcoming ones if we needed them. So that's good to know.
Yeah, I just might comment too that we've held a lot of these, and this was the one, since we had enough volunteers, that went smoother, I think, than any of the others. We were even able to leave shortly after 12 because everything was basically done at that time.
Yeah, it's a lot more fun. You got enough people. So we'll have another one in either mid-September or October, maybe late October. We can decide that later on. No point doing it now. All right, anything new on the Pennsbury School District sustainability committees? I guess Linda and Kevin?
No.
No? Are they still meeting? Or is it?
I haven't heard anything recently.
Yeah,
Yeah,
kind of dropped.
I haven't heard anything.
Mm-hmm. All right. I see Dan Grenier box, but I don't see Dan in it yet.
What? I'm here, Alan.
Oh, you are there. You're listening. Okay.
Yeah.
So did you hear we might be talking about the tree planting locations on June 7th?
Yes, I heard. I came in as you said. Okay, that's number one, and then you moved on to number two. So
Okay, all
I
right.
missed your
So
first
you're on
topic.
board. All right, good. All right, number 4, the proposed LMT ordinance revisions.
Well, what about the
The
recycling guide, Alan? Did we forget about that?
oh, the recycling guide, sorry. Yeah, good point. The Yardley Makefield Democrat Committee requested that we hand out or discuss the recycling guide at their meeting. Paul brought this up. I'm not in the loop on this. And I guess I could make some copies available, make maybe 10, 15 copies and have them available at the meeting. And we could briefly describe it. Is anybody interested in going?
Alan, I would be careful with that only because the EAC is a township entity, whereas the club is a political entity. And
Yeah.
I appreciate that they're interested in the recycling guide.
Yeah.
But we have to be careful about specifically delivering things like that to a club. I think it would be better if we provided them with a link to the guide, since it is online, rather than printing it out. And if they have, for anyone that's on the EAC that is there, is more than able to reference it, obviously, and that's perfectly fine as a resource. But I would be I prefer not to just make it EAC delivering it to a specific club, whatever it would be. That's all.
All right, so no hard copies at the meeting.
Yeah, I think that's a good point Dan brings up. But as long as it's made available to everybody, I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, and I would offer it up to the Republican Club too, or anyone else that would want it.
Of course.
Yeah, if we did that, then we could probably hand them out, but we haven't done that yet.
Well, it's also the recycling guide too, right? So we want to try and eliminate paper as much as possible. Sorry.
Right. That's it. That's a very good point.
That's probably more important right there.
Right. Yeah.
All right, the proposed ordinance that would require open space for residential development in R1 and R2. I believe Dan and I talked about this briefly. It's gonna go to a vote on June 7th to be advertised, and this would be a revised version. It went before the Planning Commission, I think for about the 4th time on Monday, and they had a number of suggestions that'll be incorporated in this one that's going to be advertised on June 7th. And it looks like they're also going to be modifying the subdivision saldo ordinance. So the zoning and saldo are consistent with their definitions of open space and things like that.
Yeah, Alan, I can give you a little more background too. At our last Board of Supervisors meeting,
Yeah,
and this is a little bigger picture, one of the main reasons, the Torbert Farm plan was submitted as it was, is that the by right plan allows for 78 1.5 acre lots, I think, plus or minus, that are basically spread out kind of cookie cutter and doesn't require much in the way of open space and everything else. But that's because we have some pretty, in my opinion, I'll say it that way, some pretty outdated zoning ordinances relative to how subdivisions can get laid out. In that, we do have some good ones with low impact design. We have some overlays that were pretty good, but from a sort of, I'll say, more modern ordinances that consider maximizing environmental benefit or minimizing environmental impacts and other things, we're a little outdated, I think, in general. So we're doing, our township manager and township staff are looking at different types of zoning ordinances for future consideration by the board over the course of the year. So I'm telling you that so you guys aren't surprised by anything, and so you can get ahead of the game in terms of providing input. You know, for example, there are lots of different ways to approach zoning, to, you know, whether it's, you know, traditional neighborhood development, new urbanism, you'll hear all these terms, new urbanism, transit-oriented development. You know, there's all kinds of different things you could do just from a zoning perspective that can kind of go the way of this cluster development ordinance, but have been thought out in great detail in many places across the country. And some may be fitting for Lower Makefield, some may not be, because the type of community we are. So I would, if this group could start to generally consider that as the township moves forward and start to think of some ideas in terms of how we might be able to update both our zoning ordinance and then, of course, the accompanying saldo, right? We think of zoning as one way, but saldo is the nuts and bolts of how these projects get executed, how these developments get executed.
Right.
Just now's the time to do it. We don't have a lot of developable areas coming up. You know, Gray Nun and Torbert are two obvious ones that are big sizes that we hear rumors about all the time. I'm sure there's a few others, but we want to be thoughtful about that so that we don't get, you know, and we need to do that fairly quickly. If any of these projects are going to move forward or anything is proposed at these lots fairly soon, these parcels fairly soon, we have to be able to address that, obviously. So anyway, not to get into too much detail, because there's not much detail to get into at this point, but I think if this group, given your your history and your background and all this, I think it could be a big benefit to the township if you could.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dan. I had a question too. I've been thinking about that very same thing you're talking about. I know there's not a lot of farmland left, but what are the legalities of making farmland preservation mandatory?
Well, I'm not an attorney, but you know, the municipal, so we can build in, there are limits, so it's not a taking, right?
Right.
But we could build in terms of our zoning, you know, this whole cluster development approach, right? It requires a certain percentage of open space, 25%, I believe. And one thing this one doesn't do, as an aside, but I wanted to ask this group about, is it doesn't differentiate between resource protected lands and other lands. So if you have to maintain 25% of resource protected lands anyway, you get credit for that from an open space perspective. So you can double dip under the current proposed ordinance.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there may be a way to include farmland in that in the future, and I think that's partially what this does. It goes back to the definition of open space within the saldo as it applies to zoning, which is key, and it also goes to and this is something that I've been interested in, what the maximum allowable percentages of a parcel or a project you can require to be open space under any ordinance. And that's one of the questions that I don't know that we've gotten a great answer to. You know, 25% has been thrown out there, 50% has been thrown out there, but I haven't gotten much in the way of feedback relative to what else we could do. If 50% is too high, could we do 45? Could we do 40, 30, whatever it is? How much can we actually say you need to preserve open space, including agricultural areas, to your point, Jim?
Yeah, I think it's to some degree a gray area. I mean, is it 50, 49, 48? constitutes a taking and what results in, an ordinance that's in the best interest of the community. So, yeah, it's an interesting question, Dan. It's a question of maybe degrees of pregnancy. I'm not sure, but it's going to be interesting to find out where that line is or where the line can be drawn that will be acceptable as far as the courts are concerned.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. So anything like that this group has thoughts on, guidance at all, whether it's percentages, whether it's language that I know you all looked at that proposed ordinance a while back. It's changed a bit. The planning commission has been asking for a lot of different changes. I'm not sure that all of them have been put in there. I haven't been able to see a red line of the document to see what's been changed versus what was not changed off of their requests and recommendations. So
we haven't seen it since November. So I guess we'll get a chance to look at it after it's advertised, June 7th.
Yeah. So, and hopefully you all can, I wish you'd be able to, I'll see if I can't get it. When's your next meeting?
June 8th.
Oh, the next, of course. I'll see if I can't. I don't know if Alan, if you or someone else, but if you want to reach out to Jim Majewski for a copy ahead of the meeting, and you
Ahead
could
of the
offer June 7th
meeting?
so you could offer some informal comments and then have more formal comments after on the advertised version from this group on the part of your June 8th meeting. That would probably be appropriate.
Well, it would be nice if we could see it before it's advertised, because after it's advertised, it becomes more difficult to change.
I understood. I guess they've been focused on the planning commission. For whatever reason, which is fine. The planning commission has been trying to improve it regularly. I know that. But it's nice to see. It's nice to see it in. To your point, Jim, it's nice to see it in its latest version, so you can make sure everything's included from your end, because obviously this is an ordinance that the EAC is interested in.
All right. Well, in a week or two, I'll ask Jim Majewski to get a copy.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So we'll move on to land use plans. We've got, actually, before we do that, I see Paul's on the call. Can we have a quick vote to approve the April meeting minutes?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the April 13th meeting minutes
As distributed.
as printed or as shown or whatever. So.
Yeah, as distributed. Yeah, I'll second it.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, Kevin, good. All right, check that one off. All right, on the land use plans, 1101 Big Oak Road. That's gonna go before the supervisors next Wednesday. They're gonna ask for approval. I sent out the latest arborist report. And did you get a chance to look at it, Linda? Our
I did.
tree expert.
So they only changed 3 trees.
Yeah, they said
Yeah.
3 of the trees that they said were hazardous or diseased were actually not, but they're gonna take them down anyways, so they'll be, instead of 205 replacement trees, 223. It'll add 18.
Linda, I had a question for you. And I don't have it open in front of me, but I read it. And there was a statement in there where they listed, basically, they used an interesting term for a native forest habitat for, basically calling it trash. Calling it like,
Yeah.
that
And
was,
that's where so again, we're still back to the original language from the original report where a tree is considered hazardous, whatever, if it's going to
Exactly.
fall on a future house, which doesn't exist today. So if the trees fall today, who cares if they fall? But but they haven't fallen. They're not dead or dying today. Well, these whole, at least the way I'm reading these reports, is that if they're going to die eventually, they're considered hazardous. And I
Right.
don't understand. Decline here's a wonderful one. Decline beyond recovery. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
every tree's eventually gonna die, right? It's an organic.
Everything in this
Everybody's
world
gonna
is
die
eventually going to die.
sometime.
It doesn't mean that
Tell me
it's
about
dead today. So is it dead and dying today? We can't, and this was part of the argument I even had with the arborist on site. Well, the tree is going to fall on a house. What house? Well, the house that's going to be put there. Okay, congratulations. It's not there today. I don't understand. So what are these reports actually saying?
Yeah. Well, I'll put together another comment letter real quick, and I'll have few comments on the arborist report and a few on the landscape report. I would be curious on how this arborist was selected, because their office, it's a one-person office, and it's down in Ridley Park, which is down near Delaware, south of the airport. I mean,
Delaware County, yeah.
yeah, how'd they come up with this guy? How was he selected? And another thing is why he went on site with the developer and the developer's arborist. Why didn't anybody from the township or more of
And then
a,
how is that an independent report then?
yeah,
I'm
exactly.
sorry, it's not.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I'll
this
bring up
whole-
some of
this
that in our
whole-
comments.
This whole thing was kind of upsetting, I think, because, for instance, if I knew when this was occurring, I could have made myself available, probably Linda, if Alan was around as well.
Yeah,
And then they also talk about replacing, let's say, these 18 trees. And with our present cost right now at 18,236, you're probably talking about maybe $7,000 or so. Now, a whip, as I understand it, is just basically a young tree that you can probably buy for about $20. So, I'm not understanding that whole thing either.
what do you think of that,
Yeah, neither
Linda?
am I, especially when in this report, they're talking about high white-tailed deer browse. So now we're going to put in small trees that are going to be browse.
Yeah.
I mean, it's honestly, it's laughable. It really
Absolutely.
is.
All right, I'll put that in.
And I think they made some comment on the ecology of the area, like,
Oh, yeah, because so I found it, the suburban matrix, it's a disturbed
Yeah.
suburban matrix.
something like that,
Is
yeah.
that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm trying to find the report again
And he
in my
said-
emails.
He said there's very little diversity, but the other
What
arborists
does
found
that
11
have to
different
do with whether a
species.
tree is alive or not? That
Yeah, but
diversity
they're-
has nothing to do with whether it's alive or not.
Yeah, but there are 11 different tree species on that property.
Which is-
But it doesn't matter. Diversity has nothing to do with it. There are such things as hemlock forest. Tell me where the diversity is in a hemlock forest.
And not for not, Linda, to
Yeah.
your point, what are arborists actually qualified to say specifically about the ecological habitat quality of a forested area or any other habitat? They're not trained ecologists, they're arborists who look at health of a
Don't get me
tree.
wrong, it's not the best forested habitat. I've been there, but it
Right.
doesn't, that and talking about whether the tree is alive or not, is comparing apples and oranges.
I agree, right?
You're not comparing the same thing. Diversity and life, and it's two different things.
Yes, no, 100%. I feel like they're overstepping their
Because they still
Their
keep talking
scope.
about this hazardous. Okay, so specifically they brought up black locust. I'm looking at the report right now. Known for longevity and safety issues. Okay, every tree has safety issues. Any tree that falls is a safety issue. So
Yeah,
just because there's a lot of black locust out there doesn't mean that they're all hazardous. Every tree out there is, if you use that, every tree out there is hazardous. Every tree in the township
Yeah.
is hazardous.
yeah, this sets a bad precedent on how a lot can
really
get cleared
does.
even before
Does.
construction.
Yeah, because
So-
we've had things before where they said they were gonna leave trees on the edge of the property and they just ended up clear cutting the whole property.
Mhm. So I've already written up some comments and I'll finish tomorrow and I'll send them out because we have to get them back to Jim Majewski and the township engineer by maybe Sunday because they have to have them in time for the meeting. I was talking with Andy Pollock about it. And so I'll send them out tomorrow. Linda, you definitely look at it and add anything you want. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm also going to make a comment on the landscape plan because for all the replacement trees, 205 or whatever, they still are only proposing shrubs and understory trees. And this is even after Andy Pollock did a diagram showing where trees should go. Remember, we talked about that at our March
Mhm.
meeting. I couldn't see it because they were red, my color blindness. So I'm gonna say, you know, you gotta have 25% replacement trees, the actual large ones, and the rest can be shrubs and understory trees. And if they don't want to plant them on site, then they can just donate to the tree bank. But they're taking out a lot of trees, the 119 from the arborist report, and then another 43 for the tree replacement. So that's getting up there. That's getting close to 200 trees they're taking out. So they should have room.
All right, but doesn't the fact that we're suggesting that they can replace the trees with shrubs and understory trees set a precedent that might not be desirable in the future? I mean, from an ecological and an environmental viewpoint, it probably makes some sense. For instance, if we could plant like spice bush there, that deer don't particularly like, that's really a wonderful plant, you know, for the environment. That's fine, but I don't think our ordinance specifies that. Is that
Right.
correct?
They need to get a waiver to do this. And I think in instances where you have a really somewhat degraded woodland, that it makes sense to allow this in a limited space.
Well, you know, I can agree with that as long as every other future development doesn't isn't dealing with a degraded
Right.
environment.
Yeah,
Well-
we'll make it very on an as needed basis, not always needed.
Okay.
All right, so we got a couple others. So
All
we've
right.
done the
I hate to
1101.
interrupt real quick, but we do have one person for public comment on the Big Oak Road topic here. If you'd like to
Okay.
take them now, I can bring them in.
Oh, shoot. Okay, sorry.
All right, Doug is in
Hi,
the room with
Doug.
us now.
I am in the room and I will be quick because a lot of the points that are important to me have been touched upon.
All right, Doug, can you state your name and address just for the record?
Douglas Marshall, 1009 North Elbow Lane, Lower Makefield Township. I live directly adjacent to 1101 Big Oak Road. And
Hey, Doug, this is Dan Grenier. Before you get into it, I just want to make sure that you were able to get a copy of the latest report.
I did, and I thank you.
Okay, just checking. Sorry to interrupt.
A lot of the points I had have already been touched upon. I want to save time and I won't touch upon them again. But I think the thing about this particular development which concerns me is in particular the developer. There seems to be a willingness to skirt the, if not the code, the letter of the code, certainly the spirit of the code. What I mean by that is, I mean, if you look at the most recent arborist report, again, the first thing I did note was that I just, you know, I had indicated that I really felt that to get a truly independent opinion, this arbiter should have just gone out alone, or really ideally with one of the people from the EAC, and not somebody from the developer with the earlier arborist, because there is a sort of an internal bias there. And I also anticipate that there's sort of an incestuous kind of a relationship which exists among these people in this community. They want business from each other. So that concerned me. And then there was a comment here in the bottom of the report. It says, quote, the remaining balance of the trees and the consultant's position were agreed upon. Well, it's not really their place, in my opinion, to agree upon it. It's your place, and then, of course, the Board of Supervisors. So there's a sort of an arrogance there. And again, this sense that they weren't really being independent, or at least this last third arborist wasn't being independent. I just wanted to double check this, but I assume that when we're talking about that 25% ceiling, we're including things like lawns and driveways and that type of thing. So is that being incorporated into the overall valuation?
Could you say that again, specifically what I was looking at?
Okay, I don't blame you. When we're talking about the 25% ceiling, we're incorporating in that the fact that driveways and lawns and construction are going to be knocking down trees. That's part of the 25%. Is that correct?
Well, the 25% that you refers to woodlands, not specific trees.
Right, I
And
understand.
they're saying they're only going to take down, I think it was 0.93 acres, something like that, of the woodlands. So that's right at the 75% preservation, 25% removal.
Now, can we confirm the number 0.93?
Well, that's beyond our capabilities. That's something the township has to do.
Okay, because I'll tell you, I've walked by that area, and are there dead trees? Yes, but it's alive. And I don't know how you can build the six, so I don't know. I can't do it either. I don't have the ability to do it, but I guess I'll raise it at the Board of Supervisors meeting. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Doug. All right, moving on to the 1566 subdivision. That was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission April 10th, with the recommendation also that their meeting be held with the EAC, the developer, and the township to determine tree planting locations. So I haven't heard about any meeting, but that may be coming up in the next month or so. There's no definitive date for the supervisors to look at that one. Third is the Tolbert Farm. I sent out comments on it, and does anybody have any issues with those comments?
No, but do we know who the developer is?
No, I don't.
No, there is, so I can give a little, at least what I am aware of. I don't believe, as far as I don't know that they actually have one. It's more of a plan that's been put out there that can be, I probably get this wrong, so I apologize to anyone who may be listening. It's more of a plan that they've set up that can be sold to a developer, let's say, with the land.
Mm-hmm.
That happens a lot where, site plans can get approved by, someone can put a site plan together for a parcel, whether it's a developer or the landowner. And then once that site plan's approved, they can transfer that to a new owner and they can go ahead and develop it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like taking an option out on a property, and that happens a lot in certain industries where they do that for different types of developments. But that's my understanding at this time.
Has the property been sold?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
You say you don't think so?
No,
I do not. Yeah.
because the plan says it's the descendants of Harry Tolbert or whatever his name was. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't believe there's been any property transfer there.
So in our comments,
I think this is just the beginning, and I think Alan really did a good review, because when we put in that low impact development ordinance in late 2006, it's been in quite a few years now, and there's a lot of strength in that ordinance too. For instance, one of the issues they even talk about is historic agricultural soils. So even though it's pretty flat property, not a lot of impediments, I think we still have some leverage when we're talking down the road more seriously about development as far as that property is concerned.
Well, and Jim, I would caution you a little bit because the plan that's out there right now is a by right plan. So if there was some developer that said, all right, I'll buy it like this and I don't care about whatever, I just want to put up some houses that might go for over $1 million and get them done. They would have the ability to do that if the plan is approved as is, and they could do it fairly quickly. So we don't want that to happen as is, at least most of us don't, I don't believe.
No.
Like to do something a little more creative, right? But there is that potential to occur. So that's why we're watching this so closely.
Yeah.
All right, and that's why, of course, our land use review, mentions all the things that are in our arsenal as far as that's concerned. But educate me a little more, Dan. You're saying if the property is sold with that plan in mind, that the township almost has to adhere to that plan? Is that what you're saying?
So a by right plan, right, from a zoning perspective, they can lay out the lots as long as if they meet the zoning requirements, they can lay out lots per the zoning requirements. And that's what they're trying to do with what you've seen to date, those 78 lots. Now there's a whole bunch of reviews and everything else that's zoning, so they don't have to ask for any variances, right? Now they can't just go and build something. They have to go through the whole SALDO process with their access road design and their stormwater management and everything else that they have to do. That all has to meet certain requirements, but we can't, when a development needs a variance, especially a use variance or any other type of variance, that's where they don't have a right to build something if they have to get a variance. Right. Variances are a hurdle to get over, a major hurdle, but they still have to deal with the SALDO, which is the details of the design, but if they can meet the SALDO with their current with the site plan that's quote unquote by right, then the township can't legally say no to a site plan that meets all those requirements.
All right, but my question is it works something like this. Under low impact development, you have to actually examine below ground as well as above ground. And the idea is that where the ground is most absorptive, that's where the basins should be put in, that sort of thing. So when I'm looking at this plan right now with the 78 homes, there's some basins. I have no idea if they examine that, what the soil constituency is or any other questions like that. And under LID, there's a lot more questions that arise, regarding that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. My understanding is that they have done some geotechnical analysis of the soils. I believe they probably have done some infiltration testing to inform their basin design to meet township and state stormwater management requirements. My understanding is that they've already done that. I don't know the details of that to date, but we kind of heard after the fact that they had done a lot of that stuff. So
we had a comment on the stormwater management system in our comments.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing is kind of mysterious. Like, who's doing this work? Who owns the property? I mean, as far as then, Dan, it hasn't been sold yet, but I guess the Corberts have probably it's with some engineering firm or somebody to lay out these lots.
Yeah, and it's not I won't say it's that, I don't think it's that mysterious, to be honest with you. I think the property owner or the estate, I'll say the Torbert estate, I'll refer to them that way. That's not the official name, but it's the simple one. Looks to have engaged an attorney, Ed Murphy. We all know Ed Murphy, I think, from popular land use attorney in Bucks County. And they've also engaged an engineering firm. I think Ellen, is it Dynamic or something along those?
Yeah, Dynamic
to do site civil engineering for lay out the site plan and to do some site, stormwater management design and some other things. So it's as if it's not normally we're used to seeing a developer do that as part of a absolute plan development. Landowners kind of step away from it and the developer takes over and goes through a process, and it's usually some LLC or whatever company name it is, and they work with the attorney and engineer and they go put in an application. In this case, they're doing the Torbert Estate is fulfilling that role right now as the developer in an effort to get something approved so that they can then, if they want to sell the land to a developer, it already comes with an approved site plan, which probably, I'm speculating, but probably increases the value of the land that they can sell it for, because it comes with pre-approvals.
Right.
So the future developer, if they didn't want to, wouldn't have to spend as much money on engineering and lawyers and everything else, because to go in front of and get a site plan approved because it's already been done.
All right, but to approve this site plan, it has to go through all the various steps.
Yep.
Land use review by EAC, zoning, planning, everything else, correct?
That's correct. So it has to follow all of our, it'll first go through, well, it doesn't have to go through zoning because they don't have any variance requests. So it's already been, they're already starting the plan. I think they want to do preliminary and final combined. So it's a fair, and then we only have so many days by law that we can take to review it. So it's not gonna get dragged out for the sake of dragging it out to stall anything. It's just gonna be reviewed per our saldo, per our process, fairly quick, on the normal time frame.
Right.
For a site plan that is both preliminary and final. To
All
get
right,
that
but
done.
our final review could, by the time it goes through the EAC and planning and whatever, instead of 78, maybe we come up with some lower number based upon, some impediments or things that we've observed about the property.
Wow.
So the 78 isn't cast in iron, I guess, right?
It's probably pretty close because they have a lot of, I understand what you're saying, but I think they had, and I haven't looked at all the details of everything that they've studied, but I'll be a little surprised if it would be shrunken by two in terms of the number, because they're pretty good at squeezing those in. I'd be surprised if it goes any less than that, or much less than that.
One of our comments suggested they use the farmland preservation zoning ordinance, and that would still allow them 78 homes, but it would squeeze it into, 49% of the area, and 51 or 54 acres would remain farmland.
And that's something that, Alan, I think a lot of us are interested in, because I've met others have mentioned that as well, myself included.
All right. So we'll submit this comment. Does this comment become public information once we submit it?
Yeah, there's nothing that's secret
So
about
if I
this.
wanted to, say something on Facebook or whatever, I could refer to this. All right. So I'll go ahead and send this out tomorrow, and that'll be our first round of comments on the Torbert farm. And then Dan sent us a new application, the point at Edgewood Village. And I think this is just a revision of previous sketch plans.
Yeah, I haven't gone through the details, but this is, the point across from Di Lorenzo's, and on the other side is the skate shop. This went through a lot of zoning and HARB reviews, as part of just sort of zoning review versus Saldo review. So now I think they're progressing to this, and I haven't looked at it yet, Alan. I just got it and sent it to you for review, but I think now it's getting to the point where it's Saldo ready, because they got their variances issued. So it's more heads up that it's coming.
We'll look at it, see if there's any environmental concerns. There's no natural resource protected land on the site.
No.
I know that it's only about an acre.
It's more about stormwater management here and things like that, connectivity.
A lot of impervious surface, All right, number 6, the environmental lecture series. We got a lecture coming up, right, Jim?
Yeah, the lecture is going to be held June 10th. And historically, what we do is we really start our publicity about a month before. And I actually called Paul today for a little help with the newsletter, and I sent you an email, Paul, because there seems to be something wrong with your phone line. Can you help me with that, Paul?
I was not aware that I was having problems.
Well, it is. It says some message that the calls cannot be accepted or go through at this time. Anyway,
This is the first I'm hearing of it.
Why don't you
Anyway, I
check?
just picked up the phone. I got a dial tone, so I don't know what's going on.
All right, give me your number again, just in case I might have a number
Yeah,
that's.
the landline is 215
Okay.
428
Hey, Paul, just
0234.
What is
remember,
it?
Paul, these meetings are recorded just in case you don't want any public phone
Yeah.
calls.
Yeah.
That's all right. I get crank calls all the time.
Okay,
All
just
right,
checking.
215-428, what's the last?
0234.
And that's your home or cell?
Yeah, that's my home. Yeah, you usually call me on my cell phone line.
Yeah, and what's the cell?
267 334 1522.
All right, I'll give you a call tomorrow, Paul. I don't want to tie
All
up
right.
any more time at this meeting.
Okay.
You know, to get
We'll get
some
it right out.
publicity moving. I
Yep.
also have a call into Katie McVan. A while ago, Katie said that she's willing to help us as far as publicity is concerned with the lecture. So
Mhm.
that's basically it. You know, we're moving ahead with it, and hopefully we're looking for a good crowd, you know, on
Mhm.
June 10th. Because the guy is pretty well known, and I think it's an interesting topic. So,
Right. Dan, if it's not mentioned in the beginning of the supervisor meeting in that public announcements, maybe you could mention this.
Yeah, could you send me a brief note about it, or someone send me a brief note about it to make sure I have the details correct?
yeah, what I'll do, Dan, is I'll send you a copy of the flyer. The flyer has all the information that
Oh,
you'll need
perfect.
on it.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess we've covered the newsletter already because you're going to be sending out one, Paul, with the Monarch migration lecture. Okay. So up to number 8, update the EAC webpage. Always needs updating. Jean looked at the webpage and found some deficiencies.
Yeah, right. There's quite a bit that needs to be done with to update it, and what they do is what they want to do is for, I guess, whoever has responsibility for some of the topics on the webpage, and most of them, frankly, are Alan and Jim's. There are a few others, but if everybody could take a look and see if there's a part of the website that you're responsible for that is behind. You know, there are a lot of things that are years old on there. And then what has to happen is the changes have to go to Alan, and then Alan sends them to Katie, and then Katie sends them to a third person who puts them up on the website.
So it's my job, huh?
Uh-huh.
My job.
Yeah, well, you're the one making all the big bucks, Alan.
Yeah.
Right. But there's some of it is really, you know, way out of date, and so if but like I said, I think most of it's for Alan and Jim have to take care of. So, but if you check, if the rest of you will check it out and see if there's anything on there that you can update or get rid of, or
Okay, and you said Sumya had something on it that needs to be updated.
yeah, there's
not here.
under it's under every bit counts. I think that was the name of it. There's 2 little pictures without any words. And so, and there are a few things like that. I mean, I think like there's a link about EAC education. And You know, I don't know what that is, and I don't know who started that, and so that needs to be eliminated. But I'll take the recycling corner and do that,
All right,
okay?
Yeah,
And I'll-
maybe at another meeting, we want to talk about this in more detail, because I think what should happen is that one of our members should take the responsibility for checking on this periodically to make sure that everything is up to date. Because when Gene showed me some of these things, you know, there were a couple of items that were 2 or 3 years old. And we have a lot of good information that's current that should be up there. So maybe next meeting, we want to put that on the agenda. Maybe someone will step forward who's willing, you know, to do that on a current basis.
mhm. All right, it's important to get flyers like the Monarch flyer up on the website too. And recycling flyers.
Yeah, well, that's what I have to call in to Katie. I guess she's going to be doing that. And I guess she's the one, or gives it to somebody who puts it on LMT's Facebook. And I'll talk to Paul tomorrow, and we'll come up with some,
Mhm.
you know, plan to get this publicized, maybe, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 times before the lecture. Maybe with a small attendant write-up as well. So, but I'll take care of that.
Okay. All right, nearing the end of the meeting, odds and ends. Autobahn Birdtown program, or any thoughts on that? I think Kevin sent us email about that.
Who
Right,
was
Kevin?
involved with the bird town before?
I think it was Laura Brandt. Was it Laura?
Yeah, it was Laura, but it
You're
was
right.
also a woman by the name of Connie Fairchild. And I got involved in it a little initially, to the point where Audubon asked me to, you know, speak at some of their meetings about some of the things that we were doing here in Lower Makefield Township. And Steve Safier is the guy who is the front person, you know, for Audubon and Birdtown. And he was pretty good. He knew his stuff. But what happened is the program kind of went south for a while, and now it seems that they're trying to revitalize it. So maybe I can just have a little talk with Connie Fairchild, and, you know, see what her thoughts are about the revitalization of this program.
Yeah, we need a point person to,
Yeah, who's trying to revitalize it? Who was the,
Well, it's the organization itself, you know, Birdtown, and it's really an Audubon type program. And for what Steve said, they basically, you know, dropped the ball for a while, but now, you know, they're picking it up again. And, you know, quite frankly, I think it's a really good program. I mean, who can argue with birds? Matter of fact, I'm looking at my back window right now at some of them. But I'll check with Connie and then report back at the next meeting.
okay. All right, Macclesfield Park Steering Committee update. Matt's not here, so we can't get that. Patterson Farm Ad Hoc Property Committee update. Anything, Kevin?
Not yet, really. They're in the beginning stages of their planning process, so I'll hope to get more of an update tonight on the meeting.
Oh yeah, they're next after us. They hired a consultant to do the evaluation at Patterson Farm?
Yeah.
All right,
We're also looking, just so everyone knows, we're also looking to get more information about how much it's going to cost to remediate the lead contaminated soils there.
is
There's
it
a
around
lot
the Satterwhite House?
It's around most of the buildings, from what I understand.
Really?
Pretty significant amount.
There's also nitrates in the water. You can't drink the water.
From the wells?
Yeah,
Mm.
there's a sign in the sink in the kitchen. I was just there for an art auction.
Mm-hmm.
wow.
All right,
And a
is there
big
anything new
turnout.
on the LMT sustainability certification, Dan? Is
I
the
haven't
township
heard
gonna
anything. I haven't
pursue-
heard anything. But I would, if Alan, related to that, if somebody, a couple things to reach out to the township manager about would be that, the sustainable PA certification. I think I personally would appreciate it if someone could also reach out to him related to the open space plan analysis that you all have done over the, most formally in 2009, but updated since then, so that he has a better understanding of where the EAC is coming from relative to potential ranking and analysis of parcels for potential open space, as we consider that as well for the future. I just want to make sure that the information that's been gathered by this group over the years is readily available to him as he looks at some of those parcels.
All right. We sent out some recommended parcels, potential parcels to acquire for open space in last summer. Do you remember that in August?
I
Did you
do.
send him that?
You could send him that. I would also send him just the overall
The plan.
the plans and what I refer to as the spreadsheet that has all of the quantitative and qualitative analysis that he did. I think that's super helpful. Because it allows for some backup as to why they're good parcels or not, depending on what he's looking at.
Yeah, that's in the appendix of the open space plan. Is that what you're thinking about?
Yeah. And I thought back when I was on the EAC, we had looked at it, just the table. I know we were going through the table a bunch back then, the spreadsheet back then. And if there have been any updates since the actual plan, I can't remember what they might have been, but I know we were looking at it here and there. So if there's been any updates since, basically, if there's been any updates to the assessment since 2009 or the rankings or anything else, we can send them that in addition. So the plan, any updates to the plan, and the email from last summer, Alan, I think are the
All right.
keep it short and sweet there.
All right, Jim, if you know of any updates, let me know.
No, I don't think, I think we talked about some additional properties, but I don't know if there was any official update. Of course, I'm very familiar with the 2009 plan because I was one of the three people who actually, wrote it up. And the thing, what I think we should probably end up doing is maybe having a sit down with Dave, send him the information before,
That's a
and
good idea.
then let
I think
him
it's a great
digest
idea.
that. And then if you're when you're here, Alan, maybe you and I can go up and have a meeting with him, and maybe basically discuss the whole approach and everything we did. It was a really, really comprehensive plan, and it investigated basically literally every open space piece of property in the township. I think there were 269 of them, and it took us over a year, to take a look at each one of those.
Yeah. No, you guys did, it was yeoman's effort, right? As you went around the township and peeked over fences and whatnot. I mean, you went the extra mile.
Yeah, Jeff Gall always joked with me. He said, if I go to jail, Jim, you go with me.
And not to belabor any of this, but it might be, just generally speaking, feel free to invite him to a future meet, him being the township manager, to a future meeting too, just to meet everybody. He's been doing that with other groups more so than other managers in the past. So it would be great if he could join you all too.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah, but this sounds like a good plan. We'll send him the materials on open space, and then in that email we'll suggest a meeting and give him some dates.
Yep.
Hopefully get together with them. All right.
Yeah, actually, I think Katie probably has a copy of the plan. It was all bound and everything, and with official picture on the front and all that kind of stuff. So it's available to him. I'll talk to her and, make sure that he has everything he needs,
Yeah.
before we talk to him.
Well, we're gonna email him a copy. You can print it out on the color printer.
I'm pretty sure he'll just look at it on his screen.
Yeah, all right, well, yeah, I can certainly, send him
Yeah.
that out. I keep thinking that, people like me are somewhat antediluvian, which means before the flood. And new guys like Dave actually look at everything online.
All right, we're at open discussion and we got about 5 minutes, so.
Well, I have one item and it'll only take, I think, a minute or two. We're doing some significant plantings the last couple of years, hopefully at the end of this year and in the future as well. And I think, I'm not sure we have enough, maintenance people dedicated to taking care of these. Now, I know all these maintenance people, and my personal feeling is we could use a few more on board. But what I'm concerned with is when we put the trees in, taking care of them, which is primarily watering. Now, we go to Portsmouth on a regular basis, and they have a pretty slick system up there. It's basically a 400-gallon tank with a pump and a hose reel that's 300 feet long, and an irrigation wand that's pointed with holes in the bottom. Basically, what you do, you drive up to a series of trees, you stick the wand in the ground, you press the trigger, and within probably 10 or 15 minutes, you can do 4 or 5 trees. Now, in talking to the people up in Portsmouth, I just talked to the arborist up there, and he said that one person can water 100 trees in a day, which I think is pretty significant. So this arborist is going to send me some detailed info on this product that they're actually going to be buying. They're updating their system, and it's going to be a rig that can hook up, a trailer rig that's very mobile. They have about 15,000 trees that they take care of in the city of Portsmouth. A lot of municipal trees, but they also have some outlying areas too. I mean, they have about the same population as Lower Makefield Township, 35,000, but it's an urban center, not a residential center. But anyway, I'm going to find out, this information, and then I'll probably make a presentation next meeting. And then, Dan, maybe you can give us some advice as to how to introduce this maybe to the township manager, the board of supervisors, and maybe our maintenance people to see if we have a good fit there. But this thing really works. I watched it in operation one day, and it's very, very slick. And I think these rigs can be bought for about $5,000 or $6,000. So we're not talking a lot of money here. So I'll keep everybody on board. And like I said, maybe it can be placed on the agenda next meeting.
Okay. Anything
Sounds
else?
good.
All
Nope.
right. I guess do we need a vote? I guess we need a vote to
Adjourn.
conclude the meeting. Adjourn, yeah. All in favor? Hey. We're all busy, right? All right, so I'll be sending out the 1101 Big Oak review letter and the Torbert Farm review letter tomorrow. So be looking for those. And the 1101 will be out for comments. The other one's finished. So see you next month.
See you next month.
All right, everybody.
Thanks,
Enjoy the
everyone.
rest
Have
of
a good
the
evening.